Welcome to It's a Woman's World, a show which discusses any and all topics under the sun that are of interest to women worldwide. Here's Nadia Giordana.
Hello and welcome to It's a Woman's World. I'm Nadia Giordana. Our guest today is Janet Kitui, and she's an immigrant from Kenya. And she has been living in the city of Edina for a number of years and recently ran for a seat on the Edina City Council. Let's go talk with Janet and find out about what she learned about that process and how she continues to work with and in the city of Edina. Melissa, it's great to have you on the show today. Melissa Nambangi.
Thanks, nice to be here again.
It's always good to have you on the show. And Barbara Lavalure. Hi, Barbara.
Hi, hello everyone. What a privilege to be with so many powerful women. I love it.
I do too. Beverly Crosby. Thank you, Beverly, for coming on the show today.
I'm excited to hear what our guest has to say. It sounds like she has quite a few projects going on and ones that will really definitely impact the community.
And Ann McKenna, yay, you're a busy girl.
You know, it's always always a great thing to take time and just connect with other women that are doing great things. So I'm super excited to be here this morning.
Our special guest today is Janet Kitui. Welcome, Janet.
Thank you for having me on your show today. I'm truly privileged to be among some powerful women who are making things run in the world. So I'm privileged to be in your company. Thank you.
And we're privileged to have you here with us. You are originally from Kenya, as I understand, and you're living in Edina. You have for the last several years. You can tell us about that. And you recently ran for a seat on the City Council of that city, which you didn't win, but you still have passions and some ideas of how you plan to help and work with the city going forward. So that's what we're going to be looking to hear about from you. And I think Melissa has the first question for you.
All right.
Yeah, I am so impressed that you have done this running thing 2 times already. I know it is not easy with all your commitments and everything else you have to do. And I'm just wondering, are you going to go in for a third run? And what lessons do you think you have learned along the way that will make it easier for the third time, and we hope the third time will be the winner?
I am still thinking through about that. But all of us being women, and I'm not certain if all of us are mothers, it's like when you've had that baby after 9 months of carrying them and going through the labor, you say, I'm done. I'm not going to do this again. But I've done it 3 times. So in the moment you keep thinking, this is it. So at this point, I am still thinking if the needs arises that I still, my voice is needed to bring about the policies that I am so passionate about. I am not gonna close that door. Definitely it has been a learning journey, and it has layers within it in the political arena as a candidate. Number 1, I am a female. Number 2, I'm an immigrant entering a space that is dominated, male dominated. It's not easy, and all these steps along the way are designed not to be able to work for me. So I have to work 2 or 3 times as hard. Basic things such as assembling my team, the fundraising. Fundraising is so critical. It is the building blocks that really pushes you through. it's one of those things you love and hate, but they are important.
Mhm.
So without strong connections to the community that pour dollars to you as a local race, it truly is an uphill battle. But that doesn't say we can't try. And that's why I have run twice.
Mhm.
And through it, I have learned a lot that I can dispense to any other candidate who wants to run.
Okay,
So that is where I am.
sounds good.
I'd like to pop in right here. As someone who also lives in Edina, I know that one of the platforms you ran on was affordable housing, and my husband is also very involved in that. You're also a member as a volunteer of the Edina Housing Task Force. What have you learned from being a member of the Edina Housing Task Force?
There are lots of lessons I have learned being on that task force, and we are just winding up. Next week, we will be presenting to the City Council the full report. But sitting on that task force has taught me a lot in the fact that we are members of the community, but of different backgrounds, and therefore bring different perspectives at it. I'll just say that as a renter, I feel like I was there, but my voice is not quite resonating with the rest of the task force. So when we have a developer and we have one person who is in the apartment building, they are owners of the properties, they are representing different interests, just as I would be bringing on a different interest as well. So when I speak from affordable housing and I'm trying to say we need to regulate that and be able to bring rents to working people's rate, you get a pushback because the developers are like, the construction material is very expensive, the land is very expensive. So there are other factors that are driving that cost. But also at the same time, we are doing that to be able to inform the council as to what they can do in terms of mitigating the costs for the working class citizens of Edina. So there are those competing interests at that task force, and it was very clear. We had some who are very dominant, and I am living with some thought that my voice was not really heard, it was drowned in the process. That is something I have relayed to the staff member who was on our housing task force. And in addition to that, we also have what we call the Edina Housing Foundation. When you go to how that is constituted as well, it really broadens your eyes on why, as a community, pushing forward affordable housing is making progress, but it's not making progress in a huge way because certain interests are fighting against it. They may not be open about it, but behind the scenes are working on it. So I bring in the Edina Housing Foundation because that is a foundation that is supposed to help people who are renters that want to become homeowners in an expensive city. Because sitting on the housing task force, I did come across a report which stated the luxury apartments, which are going up extensively in our city, the 4 and 5 star, we have a vacancy rate of almost 6%, which is really high. A good vacancy rate should be at 3%. But in the next year, we will have another 180 units coming online. So you're saying, why are we building more of that kind when we already have a vacancy rate? The demand is not there, but yet we continue building those kind. But at the same time, looking at the affordable housing units, in the next 4 quarters, 0 will be coming online. So those are the things that are informed from me serving on the housing task force. So,
Janet,
yes.
you have really put your heart and soul into these projects, it sounds like. And you've been working on these issues for quite a few years, as I understand.
Yes.
achievements have you made over the years? What pluses can have been made because of your efforts?
I believe this is an inclusive effort. I don't want to take credit that I single-handedly can. But what I have made is truly being able to be a part of the Housing Task Force, because that report, if it gets adopted by the City Council in conjunction with our comprehensive plan, those two things will become the moral guiding document for how affordable housing is constructed. Because sitting on that Housing Task Force, you learn of how many units are given from the Metropolitan Council. It assigns every single city in the 7-county metro area as how many affordable units each city should be building. And it's just a goal. If they meet it, fine. If they don't, it's up to them. But all these things have other things that are driving it, and why it is important for each city to hold its fair share of constructing affordable housing, because collectively it becomes a building block for the economic well-being of the entire region. So it's not just city specific, but it has other benefits for the entire region. So in terms of what I have brought to the table, I am just bringing the fact that there are certain voices, which are the renters people and their perspective. And if I am a renter and I have a larger family, more than 2 children, we are really not constructing housing for those kind of families. So I am hoping that any projects coming online in the next 4 or 5 years, we have units that are more than 3 bedrooms in the multi-family housing to incorporate the larger families. And that will be the competing interest of balancing cost and square footage that can accommodate a bigger family. So that, I believe, is my largest contribution on the Housing Task Force, is to be able to open up and say, we need to do more. Either we are building multi-family housing that can incorporate bigger families with more than 2 children, or we need to have a different housing, which we call the missing middle, is really like triplex, duplexes that are still within a price range that a family can afford, and townhomes. We need to construct a few of those to be able to accommodate larger families. So that would be my contribution so far, specifically on the Housing Task Force.
Well, thank you, Jane, for your courage. I want to voice that and say, you know, sometimes when you are visionary, you see things a lot of people don't see. And sometimes it takes time for other people to come along and start seeing what you are seeing. So I thank you for your courage. And I also want to encourage you to not back down, because, you know, it sounds like what you're doing is something that is needed. So just the fact that it's taking time doesn't mean it's not happening. So keep up your voice. And with that, I'm just curious on a separate note. Coming from Kenya, an immigrant, in Kenya, especially women, it's changing slowly, but there's still the oppression on women. One, thank you for being so courageous, even as a woman, and coming from that background. What inspired you to just be who you are, regardless of who is following you? And coming from that background, what inspired you?
Well, I am retracing my steps back, and I can build on the foundation that things usually are happening while you're growing up, and you don't realize how they are forming who you become. I come from a family of very strong women, and the matriarch of that family is still alive at 94 years old, and that's my grandmother. She's a formidable force. She didn't go to school herself, but family believed in education. And it's seeing her courage doing things. She was one of the very earliest women doing her own business back home. Of course, in our environment in Kenya, women have always been held back running for office. Not to say that America is promoting that, but it is making progress. We still have yet to have a female president in the United States. So we still have a long way to go, similarly to how Kenya is in terms of holding women back to hold public office. So my background is strongly influenced by my grandmother, who became a surrogate mother to me because my mom was in and out, and she happens to pass away very early. So my grandmother truly took on the raising and instilling who I am today. So she and I actually traveled here in '98 together because my uncle was already here. And that's how I end up in Fargo, North Dakota. But to truly run for office here, it is one of those things I didn't plan on, but I had been involved all along. I retraced back to 2008 when Barack Obama was running, and he would come to the Twin Cities. At every single one of those events, I took my daughters, and they talk about it to today. So I have had an interest in it. And when I got naturalized in 2004, it was truly important for me to cast my vote. And I've been involved in politics since then. Did volunteer on John Kerry's campaign in 2004. And so I was involved in 2008 with Barack Obama and just continued that. But when I became president of Southview Middle School, one of the members of our parent council said, I think you should run for school board, and planted the seed that I actually could be in an influential position. And it's all because I was very powerful, passionate about policies and how they impact and the outcomes of those policies, whether it is at the educational level now or even at council. I can see the interrelations or interconnectedness of the policies that are created in different boardrooms or at council members' chambers. So that is the genesis of my interest to run for office. But in 2016, the now exiting council member, Mary Brindle, on her platform, she had affordable housing. And that caught my attention. And it got on my attention because definitely it was one of those issues that I was struggling with. And I'm thinking, she's mentioning it. That means there are more people who are being impacted by this issue. So I reached out to her. And as a direct result of that, she actually is the one who said, I'm not running in 2020, you should run. So my running in 2018 was really in preparation for running 2020 because I knew that was going to be an open seat. So that is how I come about, and perhaps it's the way I just presented the struggles of having to find a place, and housing stability is important to any family. And when you are a single head of the home, it becomes really challenging at times. So those were the things that really influenced my decision to run, and saying home is so important because from home, a stable home, all the other things thrive from it. My children will do well in school, they can do well in school, they can be productive citizens of the community, and the benefits are on and on. It also determines our health outcomes. Where we live, the zip code you live in can be assigned to see what kind of health issues are going on in that. So it's all those things put together that I decided to run, that I would like to be able to say, when all of us are at the table, or representation matters, and it matters because it informs the solutions that we come forward with and the sustainability of those solutions. So that's the reason I run.
Janet, I'm wondering about your thoughts. I'd like to hear your thoughts on sustainable growth for the city of Edina.
Yes, the sustainable growth part is two-pronged for me. It is in the prong of development in terms of the density part of it, because some of our constituency are very, very sensitive to that and push back on council in terms of approving developments that are going to bring density into the community. So growth is inevitable as far as I can see, and it's driven by many other market forces. But at the same time, I also would like to have sustainable growth in terms of controlling that development and really holding the developers accountable to how we grow in terms of approving, and not just approving everything that comes in front of the council. Gotta have a thought out process for that. But the other part that I really care about so passionately is density is important in that it takes smaller square footage. And to me, when we have density, it will be able to provide transportation, which will be public transportation. So the Metropolitan Council, when they're discussing transit, they look at density. If we have more people at a certain geographical location, it makes it easier for those people to commute back and forth. And my contribution of trying to say, how do we reduce carbon emission or green gas emission into our environment? Transportation is one of those things. So I would like to be able to see density, but also it comes in with the climate component part of it and sustainability. So it is deep that I wanna get into it, but it is, I don't have all the pieces. Definitely density produces its own challenges for some people. It does create traffic congestion, but if we are using public transportation, that shouldn't be an issue. So the people who are against density, it's always to do with traffic congestion in the city. When it comes to climate change or sustainable development and growth, I am looking at renewable energy, or even when the developers are building buildings, can we use sustainable materials that are environmentally friendly to our environment? Because climate justice is a racial justice issue as well. So I am trying to think that if we can reduce what we dump into our landfill, will definitely improve our health for all of us globally, not just in our little community of Edina. We do have a footprint that we are putting out globally. So renewable energy is really one other aspect of that sustainable growth when I talk about it. So yes.
Janet, I'd like to change the subject and get onto more of Janet Kitui, the person. I know that you came to this country just after high school. You probably don't know it, but we have the same alma mater, Minnesota State University Moorhead.
Yes.
So we have another thing in common.
Yes.
And then you went on to get your master's at Hamline University. Plus you're a single mother of 3 now adult children. So let us have a look into the Janet Kitui personality.
Yes. Well, the person is a truly driven human being. And like I say, I was raised by very strong women who was my grandmother. She didn't have an education, so there was truly an inbuilt incentive to truly uplift her. When someone has so much faith in you and pushes you to be better, it became so important. And this goes way back before I even graduated high school to come here. My grandmother always stressed the importance of education. And to me, from a very early on age, I just saw that is the pathway out of where my current circumstances were then. And in '88, I landed in Fargo, North Dakota. I enroll in school, and it was a start. It wasn't a start and stop, but it was just taking enough to keep me in status. But I also paid my own way. So that is just the determination of wanting to make it through under all circumstances. Meet my husband before I could finish school. Of course, a baby comes along. Now I'm going for my undergrad and still raising a child and still working. So that is a determined will there. Eventually, I finished my undergrad after a while, but 1996 is when I graduated from Morehead State. And then I moved to the Twin Cities with my husband then, and we were together for a while. Of course, that didn't work, but still the motivation for me to go to grad school was definitely my 3 daughters. And it was important for me to leave that out for them to say, when you are an educated woman, you can do a lot more. So in spite of me being with them alone, I still went to school. Today, they talk about how I had a young daycare person who would take them from daycare and bring them home while I'm taking my evening classes after work. And they didn't see me for 3 years on weekends, did not have time with me. So I did not take them places, did not do activities with them because mom is in grad school. But today, that is quite an accomplishment. I always remind them, you do not have any reason to not graduate because you saw me leave that out. I went to school raising you. You may have made some sacrifices, but with anything good, it always has, there is a sacrifice to be made. So I did earn my MBA from Hamlin, and that's the only time I accumulated student debt. It's my grad
and I think we've run out of time. This is so fantastic. You've done such a great job. And it's so interesting to hear about your personal life also.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
I want to thank you for being on the show today. You've given us a great deal to think about and to hopefully work for in the communities, even in our own communities. I worry each of us lives in a different communities, and these are all good ideas that apply to so many communities. So thank you for being on the show, and thank you, Melissa and Beverly and Ann and Barbara for being co-hosts on the program. And thank you everyone for watching today. We'll see you next time on It's a Woman's World with a brand new guest.